by being thrown into the deep end of the pool with some buy and hold properties. My grandmother passed away. She had some townhome units, a sewer treatment plant, and some land. And yes, I owned a sewer treatment plant. Yes, I know more about sewer treatment plants than you care to know. And I didn't know anything about real estate investing. I didn't know any of that. And I went to Arizona by myself, and I just became the dumbest person in the room. And I started asking lots and lots of questions, right? I surrounded myself with people that were in the know, and I learned. I then decided that we could not sustain the buy and hold properties, the townhome units, that we couldn't command the rents that we needed to command in order to be profitable. And so I went to my family and I said, we need to sell these units. And then we need to take that money and leverage it and do something else, maybe build on the land. Well, my family wanted no part of that. So I bought the company, okay? Again, knowing nothing about real estate investing, nothing about development, nothing about building, but I again became the dumbest person in the room, and I asked lots of questions. I started my own construction company. At one point, we had 36 employees. In 3 years, we grew very, very fast, and we were building, we held all of our licenses. We had everything but HVAC and roofing, and the only reason we didn't have those is because the insurance was way too high, okay? So we were building, and we were building, this was the early 2000s, and we were building, our own projects. We were building other people's projects. 2003, 4, 5, and 6, as you can imagine, we grew very, very fast. And we were building commercial buildings. We built the jail in the town. We built a bank in the town. We built other people's projects, and we were rocking and rolling. And I was young, and I was single, and I was doing very well. But I was also working myself into an early grave because I was working 18 hours a day, 7 days a week. And I was making a lot of money. And I was, like I said, the stress was just unbearable. And then 2007 happened. And I knew that it was coming, 2007. But I didn't think it could happen to me. Here's why. I was only leveraged about 10%. I owned a lot of assets. I had cash flowing properties myself. I had big equipment. I had cash. And I thought, I'm sitting in a great position. I had great relationships with my vendors and my lenders and my private investors. Boy, was I wrong. 2007 landed right on my head. And I had to literally tell 36 families that I could no longer employ them. And that was hard. It was really hard. We tried. We sustained for a little while. At the end of the day, I did manage to sell everything off. I fire saled everything. I paid everybody that I owed. I did not have to go through bankruptcy. But 3 years later, after waking up every single day, knowing that I'm not going to get paid, I still had that strength and that integrity because I knew I was going to be able to pay my people, the people that I owed. But that was hard to do. And 3 years later, I left Arizona, came back to California with $0 in my pocket, and I had lost $20 million. That has a tendency to shape you as an investor. I didn't used to tell that story, and I tell it now because it's important as investors to know who you are as an investor and what you need as an investor. It dictates your guidelines and your direction and the path that you take. So when I came into the note space, now mind you, I went away from real estate for a little while, understandably. But this was really a blessing for me. It was a blessing. It's a lot of money, but it was a blessing because I have my health. I came back and I learned from it, and I grew stronger as an investor because of it. And I don't think that would have happened had I not gone through that, okay? So leaving, construction and real estate and coming back in to real estate about 3 years later. I started fixing and flipping. I started wholesaling, and I was doing all the stuff, tax liens, tax deeds. I have a real estate mind. It is a passion of mine. The other passion of mine is helping people. So when I discovered notes and started really thinking about notes and focusing on notes, I thought, wow, I have an opportunity to do real estate and also help people and make a great profit doing it. So I feel truly, truly blessed. But I know my what. And that's what we're going to talk about a little bit in terms of due diligence, okay? What does due diligence give you? It gives you control. It gives you control over the money that you make. And knowing your what is the key. Knowing your risk tolerance is the key. I like to say I'm risk adverse. I don't have much tolerance for risk, clearly, after what I've gone through. So for me, knowing my what is key. I want flexibility. I want to be able to have different exit strategies. I want to be able to have a say in what happens with my asset and my invested dollars. So knowing my what and talking about due diligence, I mean, we really have a lot of control over the notes that we purchase and the amount of money that we pay, okay? We know we have control over the exit and sale price. We have control over the length of time in the investment for the most part. If we want to have a short-term investment, 12 months or less, you know, we enter I focus on non-performing, first position, secured by residential real estate. Generally, my values are anywhere in the current market value of the properties that we buy that are securing our notes are generally between $50,000 and $200,000. Okay. So in the non-performing space, we can help a borrower to work them out and exit them, 12 months, or we can choose to keep it for cash flow. There's choices in this space. Like I said, length of time. We can create chunks of cash. We can create streams of cash. We can create both in the same asset, which I love. We have control over the exit strategies. There are plenty of note investors that are out there that don't prefer to help, homeowners. They want the house. They're note investors because they want the house. That's not how I am, because I've been through 2007 and 2008. My preference is to help a borrower stay in their home. That's my preference. That's me as an investor. So I challenge everybody really to make sure that before you go into this, or if you're in a transition phase in your note investing career, define what your what is and stick to it. Exit strategies, again, there are 23 exit strategies in note investing. We typically only use 4, but there's that flexibility there. So no matter what happens with the market, and it doesn't matter, real estate market, stock market, economic, geographic, doesn't matter, jobs, you can, as long as you're flexible, you can ebb and flow with the changing times. And everybody knows that we're in a very high market right now in terms of real estate. Who believes that there's a correction coming? I do too. I don't want to be caught. I'm risk adverse, remember? So make sure that you're aware of the different possibilities and the different exit strategies that are available to you so you can sustain and you won't lose any money. Okay? We are not location specific. If you're a fix and flipper, and I have been a fix and flipper, I've been a developer, you have to be in that location. I like freedom. This business allows us to go anywhere at any time and do this business from anywhere in the world as long as you've got a cell phone and an internet connection. To me, that's freedom. Set your guidelines. We're going to talk about due diligence in a moment. I cannot stress to everybody enough that due diligence is the most important piece that is going to protect your invested dollars. Do not skip. Don't skip. Don't skip over anything. Make sure you check all the boxes because that's how you protect your investment. So set your guidelines on what's good for you and your what and who you are as an investor, and then stick to them. Don't take a deal and conform it. You want to conform the deal to your guidelines. You don't want to conform your guidelines to the deal. Make sense? And again, you can do this business anywhere in the world. And for me, that's freedom. All right, so secret number 2. Want to know how due diligence will give you virtually risk-free investing? Okay. I say that there is no such thing as a bad note, but there is such a thing as buying notes badly, right? Knowing your what. Knowing your what is the key to this. All right. Some things that you might want to identify that are important for you and your criteria. The bullet points that I'm going to list here and talk about are my criteria, and everybody's different. Okay, so know that. It's completely fine to be different. Please do. But know your guidelines and stick to them. So for me, and this is a big one, property valuation. Again, I buy first position, non-performing, secured by residential real estate for the most part. Property valuation is how we buy our notes. We don't buy on UPB. There are plenty of note investors that do. It doesn't conform to me and my guidelines, so we stick with the collateral that is securing our invested dollars. Property valuation, and you use multiple sources. So you can start with the internet and then move on very quickly, right? Zillow, everybody knows who Zillow is. Their valuations are awful. Awful, right? I mean, we all know, right? However, they've got some great material and great resources for you that, reports, market statistics, property identification numbers, links to county websites. It's a good tool, just take it with a grain of salt. Always, always, always have boots on the ground. Always have boots on the ground. You want to make sure that you have somebody, whether it's a realtor, and we use realtors, we will call realtors and ask them for their help. And I'll tell you about that in a moment. But you always want to make sure that there's a structure on the lot. Don't rely on Google Earth. Ask me, I know a couple of investors that have done that, and they said, well, the Google Earth image date was only a month ago, and the house burned down. And they bought the note, and they didn't do their due diligence, right? So they didn't, excuse me. Got a little sideways there. They didn't do their due diligence, and they didn't check, they didn't check that box. So always, 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 if it's a friend, if it's a realtor, if it's another investor, somebody on Bigger Pockets, wherever, somebody has to drive by that property, take pictures in real time so you know the condition. It's really important to make sure that that structure is there. We call realtors and we explain. We never, ever lie to realtors, please. Never. Just explain what you're doing. I'm a note investor. I live in California, and I'm looking at a note that is secured by a house in your town. You're the expert. Would you mind taking 5 minutes out of your day and in your valuable time to help me out? Sometimes they say yes. Sometimes they say, yes, I'll do that for a fee. Sometimes they say, no, I'm not interested. And that's okay, because there's many more, right? So we call the realtors, and oftentimes realtors will go above and beyond, and we take care of our realtors. If a realtor goes above and beyond and really gives us a great, does a ton of pictures, great CMA, does a couple of different houses or properties for us, we'll send them a gift card. We'll send them a gift card and say thank you very much. And you know what? We've developed an entire network across the entire United States because we treat people well. We treat people the way that we want to be treated. So, realtors, tell them that you understand their time is valuable. Let them know and appreciate them. We also will tell them, listen, if you do this for me now, when we exit the note, if we buy this note and we exit the note, if we end up with it as an REO, either via a deed in lieu or via a foreclosure, then we'll sit down and have a discussion with you about listing that property for us. That's what's in it for them. And about 75% of the time, the realtors will help us. 75%. If not, then call somebody and ask them, even if you have to pay for it. There is a service that's out there. It's called We Go Look. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. But if you can't find somebody to go by, then We Go Look is great. Always take real-time pictures. Here's an example. May of 2017. Structure on the lot. August of 2017. Now I have to admit, you guys, these two houses are not the same. They look it though, don't they? but I want to prove a point because honest to God, this stuff happens. And if you don't do your due diligence, if you don't verify that a structure is on the lot, then you can get hurt. And if that structure is gone, that's your invested dollars are gone. Okay?
What's that service cost that
We go look, it generally is anywhere between $59 and $79. Not too bad. And they'll give you a report and pictures and all that. Yeah. And their turn time is pretty quick. Yeah. There's also property preservation. If you call it a property preservation company, they'll do it too. They'll do drive-bys. Sandcastle is one of them. It's a good one. All right. Again, knowing your what. Verify the amount of delinquent property taxes and or if there's a lien, if there's judgments. But let's talk about property taxes for a moment. So delinquent property taxes, please do not rely only on the internet to look up property taxes. Now, there are some counties that you can only look on the internet unless you pay. You know, they want you to pay. So kind of trust but verify with property taxes. But we always call the county, always, always, always. And we ask them if they tell us, nope, property taxes are paid and there's a zero balance. Now what do? You ask another question, right? If there's a zero balance, you want to make sure that those property taxes have been paid for either by the borrower or by the bank, and that they haven't been sold in a tax lien sale or a tax deed sale, right? There have been plenty that have had many surprises because they saw zero balance and the county verified zero balance, and they didn't ask the next question. Well, who paid it? Who paid it? Generally speaking, yes. Yeah, tax liens the certificates are typically recorded and you can find it. But again, if you're not asking the question, and at this point, you haven't pulled an O&E report, right? So O&E report is ownership and encumbrance report. That will tell you a lot of the details of the asset that's securing and the borrower, by the way. It'll also give you chain of title of the note and the mortgage or the deed of trust. Okay. But at this point, we haven't really paid. We're not doing paid due diligence yet. At this point, we're just doing free due diligence. Okay. All right. So if the balance is zero, make sure to find out who paid it. And then if it's a tax lien that has been sold, don't freak out. It's okay. Find out how much. Find out how much that tax lien was sold for. And if the numbers still work in your deal to pay that, to redeem that tax lien, then still do the deal. But if you don't ask the questions, then you're not going to know. So ask the questions, okay? Remember, knowledge is power. All right. Verify any liens or judgments that are junior to you. Why is this important? This is important because one of our exit strategies that we do use is called deed in lieu of foreclosure. So as the bank, we often will go to our borrower who has been delinquent 3, 4, 5, 7 years and say, listen, you need to pay, or it's time, what's your situation? Oftentimes borrowers will say, I'm just so overwhelmed. I want out of this house. I'm willing to sign the deed to you in lieu of foreclosure. So you will accept that deed to this house as payment in full. Well, if we haven't verified any liens or judgments behind us, if we don't know who's behind us, now we're in trouble. Because if we take that deed as payment for our loan in full, our loan goes away and everybody moves up a spot, right? So we're going to be responsible to pay any junior liens that are behind us, any seconds, any liens, any judgments. So always verify, any, and pull your O&E reports. Don't ever skip that spot, that check mark in your due diligence checklist. A lot of people on contract for deeds will not pull O&E reports. I think that's a mistake. I think that's a big mistake because there's plenty of liens that can even happen with the contract for deed owner, right?
Can you just tell me again what O&E is and who does the report?
Sure. Sure. O&E report stands for ownership and encumbrance. There are plenty of companies that are out there that will do it. We prefer ProTitle USA. There's Red Vision. There's all kinds of places that will pull the O&E reports. I find ProTitle to be pretty accurate and cost effective. No. Okay, so that's part of our paid due diligence. Our stages in due diligence are three. Okay, two stages of free due diligence, and then we make an offer to the seller. Once we have accepted offers, that's when we start doing our paid due diligence, and we'll pull that O&E report. Sometimes your electronic collateral file will have an O&E report. Make sure that it's very recent. I always like to pull one anyway with our own company, just in case, but everybody's different, right? For me, I would much prefer, regardless of whether it's a month or two old, I would still rather pull that O&E report because things happen in a month or two. Things happens in a month or two.
So are you pulling like are you contacting county and stuff before you guys even make an offer?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So you do that all before getting the property value, you send someone else to look at it first.
Yes.
Okay.
Let me back up a step. Yes, and sometimes is the answer. It depends. If we have a deadline for bids, then we don't want to waste realtors' time. If we're only bidding on a couple of assets at one point in time, then yes, we'll ask the realtors to go out. But if there are a lot of assets, we want to make sure that we've got accepted offers because again, we want to value their time. We don't want to waste their time. So sometimes yes and sometimes no, but we always have somebody go by. Yeah, absolutely.
So on ProTitle USA, is that a national company?
Yes.
Look at the
Yes.
title on that property, make sure there's no.
Yeah, they will pull all, from all the county records, and they have a new service now too that you can actually pull abstracts, meaning that pull the actual judgments, and a few other things. So it's a really great service. I like the guys too. They're great people. Yeah. It depends. Every county is different. So generally speaking, it's anywhere between $87 and $130 to expedite. Some states you can't, or some counties are not. It's not available to expedite. But usually, if it's available, then they'll be able to get it back to you. Literally, sometimes even that same day, which is great. So. All right. So you want to verify your judgments and your junior lien holders, and you do that through your O&E reports. All right. Verify the type of asset, okay? Make sure that if it's a single family residence, make sure if it's a condo, verify if it's a mobile home, verify if it's land. Do banks get it wrong sometimes? All the time, right? So trust but verify. For me, as a note investor, my preference is I don't buy notes that are secured by condos, typically, okay? My reason is, number one, homeowners associations. Number two, in down markets, condos are hit the hardest. I want to be able to sell it. If I have to take this property back as REO, I want to be able to sell it. It's hard to do with condos in a down market. That's just me as an investor. There are plenty of other note investors that are out there that do great, especially in Florida. All the condos in Florida, they do great. I just choose not to. I don't buy notes on mobile homes. I don't buy notes on mobile homes. I will buy notes on mobile home parks. There's a difference, but not on mobile homes because buyers can't get financing for mobile homes. It's hard. It's hard to get. So I want to pave, the path of least resistance. The easiest way for me to dispose of that asset, and that's the route that I'm going to take. Land, that's another one. I don't buy notes that are secured by just land, raw land. Been there, done that. That's just me. So define your what. Define what makes you tick and what makes the most sense to you and your hard-earned dollars. And stick to it. And it might change. It might change in a couple of years. You start out and you go about your business and you think, okay, I've got this down pat. Now let's go and do a little bit more in this direction. Absolutely. Just know where you are at that given time and know what your what is and stick to it. Okay? All right. Occupancy. That's another one. We need to know, is the property occupied and by whom? Is it our borrower? Is it a tenant? Is it a squatter? We need to verify those things. Now, sometimes we can't always verify unless you send out a door knocker, and generally property preservation will do that. But we at least have, when we have a drive-by, we can tell that if there's somebody there versus somebody not there, okay? And do banks get it wrong? Trust but verify. This is actual this time. So I had a tape. I did my initial overview by Google Earth, dropped down to street level, took a look. Pretty nice little duplex, right? And then I looked at the date of the imagery, 2012. I thought, So I exited Street View. Gone. The bank told us this was an owner-occupied duplex. That's what was on the tape, that it was owner-occupied. There's not even a house. Pretty difficult, right? So trust but verify, and verify again, over and over and over again. Something's not right here. Absolutely, trust but verify. We go look is generally between $59 and $79, depending. I haven't come across any. Then call a realtor. They'll do it for free. Or Bigger Pockets is another one. There's a lot of reciprocity in Bigger Pockets. You know, we've been very fortunate that if we find somebody that to help us out, then we'll send them a gift card or.
Did you ever use a appraiser to go out to property?
No. Generally, appraisers take too long, and they're too expensive. I have too many other variable or variety of people I can go to get the information.
I just wanted to chime in and say that we use photographers too.
Ah, terrific. Okay.
So that's,
Yeah, that would work. Yeah, that's true.
do it.
That's true. Our preference, of course, is realtors, because they know the area. They're the local experts. They can give us a CMA, and we don't ask them for a full-blown CMA. Sometimes we get it, but we don't ask them for a full-blown. We just want a standard one-page, CMA, and just so we get an idea. And generally speaking, comping is an art. It really is. Determining valuation. But if you've come up with your own valuation by doing your first initial internet sweep, and the realtor comes back and the numbers are way off, get another opinion, right? Ask somebody else, call another realtor and get another opinion and verify where it really truly lands. What is the value? Because again, that's the collateral, and the property is securing your invested dollars. You need to know. And you don't need to know in a range that's, $40,000. I've had realtors come back and say, oh, it's anywhere between, $40,000 and $75,000. So trust but verify, and go to another realtor, or ask them, listen, could you drill that down a little bit more, or could you give me the parameters that you're really what are the criteria that you're using? What are the data points that you're using? And if they don't have any, well, that's your answer. You want to make sure that, especially if they're doing you a favor, that's fine, but don't work with a realtor that's lazy. Who's worked with a realtor that's lazy? Don't. You have choices. There's plenty, right? Okay, but we do love our realtors. Don't get me wrong. All right. Verify number of bedrooms and bathrooms. A couple of different reasons for this. Number one, for me as an investor, I don't buy any note that is secured by a property that has less than 2 bedrooms. The reason that I don't is because they're harder to sell. It used to be 3 bedrooms, but there are a lot of notes that are secured by assets, single-family residences in the middle of the country that are strictly 2-bedroom, 1 bath, and I'm missing out on opportunity. So have your criteria, but don't be so narrow-visioned that you're going to miss out on those opportunities because there's lots of them out there. But for me, a minimum of 2 bedrooms. Minimum of 2 bedrooms, 1 bath. Square footage, that's another one. Also, with the bedrooms and baths, we want to make sure that they match, right, the county records, because sometimes they've unpermitted, so we want to make sure that there's any kind of violation or unpermitted additions to property that we're aware of them. So make sure that they match. Square footage for me, again, this is just me and my team, we generally won't invest in a note that it's secured by a property that's less than 850 square feet. Why? It's harder to sell. Harder to sell. And I know that I want to be typically in and out of an investment in 12 months or less. So if I'm dealing with a judicial foreclosure state, I know that if I have to take that property back, it's going to take me 8 to 12 months typically in a judicial foreclosure state to foreclose. So I don't want to sit, with a house, if I take it back as REO, I don't want to sit with a house on the books trying to sell it for 6 months. Anything less than 850 square feet is tough to sell. So, in San Francisco, is that what I heard? Yeah. There you go. Okay, fair enough. I actually don't buy notes in California. I live in California. I grew up here, but I don't buy notes in California. Here's why. Notes in California are great, but risk adverse. I would much rather take that $200,000 or $300,000 for one note in California and put it across 5 or 6 notes across the country. That's me. That's just me. All right. Verify the year built. Why is this important? It's important because if you end up with the house as REO, if you don't know when it was built, you don't know, there might be knob and tube. If you ever have a knob and tube house and you get a borrower or a buyer for that house that's FHA, FHA is going to require that you rewire that entire house. So you need to know. Knob and tube. Knob and tube. There's actually... It is, but the requirements, because they consider knob and tube a safety hazard. FHA considers knob and tube safety hazard because there's an exposure there. The way that the panel is set up, there's an exposure. For many years it was perfectly safe, but until it wasn't, or until we were told it wasn't. So make sure that you know. Make sure that you know if the property has been vacant, when did it become vacant? That's important. If you're in Ohio, if you're in Minnesota, and it's snowing, how many snowstorms did we get? Did we hear about? I think 5 or 6 massive snowstorms. Okay, well if that property's been vacant and the bank before you has not winterized it, what do you think has happened to the pipes? Gone. If you take that property back as REO, you need to know these things. Yeah.
I was going to say lead paint too.
Lead paint. We disclose, nowadays everything is disclosed in terms of lead paint. That's not as big a deterrent for me as is the knob and tube, or if it hasn't been winterized, or if you can see that there's galvanized pipe, or a few other things that go on. But yeah, you're right. Lead paint is a big one too. It is. Verify the size of the lot. Again, if there's small tiny lots with houses right next to each other, the answer is it depends, right? There are some states that the houses are literally right next to each other. Boom, 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 boom. And people are used to that. It's a matter of who you are as an investor, and if you're willing, take a look at the market sales. Do they sell fast or slow when the lot is tiny? Most families want some semblance of a backyard. Most. Okay. County name and population. Really important. This one is important for me. When you know the county name, you can look up the population on bestplaces.net. If you've never used that, there's all kinds of great information on bestplaces.net. For me, as an investor, we don't buy in rural counties, and we don't buy in counties that are less than 50,000 population, because it's harder. You're narrowing your buyer pool if you end up with that note or that property is REO. So for me, I stick with counties that are above 50,000. But I have to know the county in which the asset is located in order to make that determination. It also helps you, of course, when you're calling for taxes and your delinquent taxes, to make sure about delinquent taxes. Population size, again, you know, don't narrow. For me, I don't want to narrow my buyer pool. For me. Violence and property crime. This is important. I don't buy assets in war zones. You don't want the joker there being your next door neighbor. And that is an actual house that I did see in Texas. I walked it. And there were 3 houses right in a row, and they all looked like that. All of them. There was not a copper fitting left in that house. So know your property crime. But then trust but verify. Because Memphis, and I'm sure that there's lots of people in here that either have invested in Memphis or have been interested in investing in Memphis. In Memphis, the property crime, or the crime ratings on both violence and property are through the roof. They're 98%. But this is where your local realtor is going to help you. Because in Memphis, it varies zip code to zip code, street by street. So use your local talent to give you the information that you need. Trust but verify, okay? Rents in the area. This is an important one as well. If you don't know what rents are in that local area, you're going to find that you're going to have trouble kind of determining whether or not you're going to be able to help your borrower and if they're going to be incentivized to stay. So if you know that rents in the area are higher than their mortgage payment, the likelihood that they're going to want to stay and work with you is higher. If your mortgage payment is higher than the rents, then they're likely not to stay. But it gives you knowledge and to say to them, listen, I realize that your mortgage payment is higher than the local rents. How about we work together and get your mortgage payment down to a more manageable level? Would you be willing to stay? But if you have that knowledge, you can use it. If you don't have it, then you're just kind of swinging at the swinging for the fence. Comps. Okay. Again, realtors. Don't work with lazy realtors. Make sure that they are giving you appropriate comps. If your house is a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom house, and the realtor brings you a comp that's a 3-bedroom, 2.5 bath, 1,500 square foot house versus your 878, that's not a comp. So make sure that you're not, that you know your data points. Don't let them mix an REO property or the as-is value right now with an after repair value. That's after you put dollars in to repair the property. That's not a comp. A lot of realtors also will take REO and they think automatically just trashed property. It's not always the case. So make sure that you ask them, I want it as is, right as it sits right now. And you can tell, even though we can't get into these notes, into these houses, when we buy these notes, sometimes we can, especially if we've got creative realtors. You can tell by the outside. If it looks pretty maintained, but there's just some high weeds, okay. But if the house, if the shutters are falling off and there's a tarp on the roof, you can pretty much bet that the inside's going to reflect what the outside is showing you. Okay, so take that into consideration. But make sure that you're not mixing ARV with as is. And make sure the data points are as close as possible. 2-bedroom, 1-bath, 3-bedroom, 1-bath, 1,200 square feet, 5,000 square foot lot, built in 1945. Within a quarter-mile radius. And if you can't do a quarter mile, then a half mile. But don't let them give you comps from 2 miles away. It's not going to help you. It's going to hurt you. It's not going to do you any good to comp this house with that one or these. That one's on wheels, right? So make sure that you have exact data points and that you're close. It doesn't have to be exact, but you have to be close. Secret number 3 is my favorite one. We as note investors have the control. It's all about, for me, it's all about the control. Due diligence, if you do your due diligence well, it gives you knowledge. Knowledge gives you power. Power offers control. And control mitigates risk. So for me, profitable investing is mitigated risk investing, which to me is sexy. And I hope you can feel that too. So, be sexy, but be smart sexy, right? And the only way to do that is if you know your due diligence, and by discovering the sexy in the due diligence that you're conducting to protect your assets, okay?
I was going to say, on your other list, some of the things to check out in our area, whether the property's in a flood zone is
Yep.
very important, and whether the property has foundation problems. So
You're absolutely
our
right.
area is very common with foundation problems, so those are definitely two things to check out.
That, and also, I mean, I could talk on due diligence for 3 hours, but I had to keep it tailored. Yes, you're absolutely right. Flood zone is important. In Florida, by the way, wind insurance, make sure that if you if you buy a property or a note against a property in insurance or in Florida, that you force place and you have wind insurance, because otherwise your insurance won't cover a hurricane if a hurricane comes. So make sure that make sure you have wind insurance. The other thing too, that we didn't, again, I wanted to make sure that we're on time. So title, you want to make sure that you've got right party contact with the borrower, and that again, occupancy, who is in that property, and how to contact them. But also you want to make sure that the chain of title, or the chain of ownership, not title, the chain of ownership follows from each bank to bank to bank. That note, that you've got a note, you've got an allonge, which transfers the ownership. That's an internal document from bank to bank. You need a complete chain. Same thing with assignments of mortgage or assignments of deed of trust. You want to make sure that chain is complete. It's not earth-shattering if it isn't. You can fix it, generally speaking. But if you don't do the research and you don't make sure that chain is complete from origination all the way through to you, then you can get yourself into some trouble. I've known note investors that have not verified, the chain, and they went to foreclose in a judicial foreclosure state. It took them 18 months to get it in front of the court. Court took a look at it and said, nope, there's a break in this chain. Threw it out. They had to start all over again. So, there's so many different data points in terms of due diligence. I mean, we really just kind of touched on it a little bit today. But don't skip steps. Really don't skip steps. Your money is too important. Your time is too important. Just know who you are and stick to it.
I just wanted to add to the novelty thing. The vast
Yeah.
majority of the United States quit using it in the 30s,
Okay?
but there were regions that continued to use it through the 50s. So basically, if you hit 65 and above, you're probably safe.
Mm-hmm. I knew that some parts had still gone through using it through the 50s, but yeah, you're right. Thank you, because I didn't answer that question. I apologize. Okay, so, more questions. Any other questions? No, we're going to be done on time. Well, actually, we're going to be done early. I'm a full-time note investor. I do have people that have asked me over and over again, Paige, we want to know what you do. We want to know how to do what you do because I want to do this. And as such, we do conduct workshops. We have 3 of them a year. We keep them very, very small. And we make sure that we answer everybody's questions. We deep dive into all the due diligence steps, how to find notes, how to fund notes, and then what to do with them once you do find and fund them. And we like to be able to give everybody the individual attention that they need and want. So if you're interested in that, please let me know. We've got some flyers and I've got a table in the other room. Yeah.
Do you do due diligence as a service?
For others?
Yeah.
No. We are a full-time note investor. I'm a full-time note investor. I've got a partner and we are very busy. We buy notes monthly. And we've got, that would be too much. Collateral Files, that's another one, by the way. Collateral Files, sometimes you get the electronic version. When you get the electronic version of the collateral file, I don't know about all of you, but me and my team, we read through every single page. Every single page. And sometimes they're really long. And unmarked. So you have to go through, but there are plenty of nuggets that are in there, so don't skip the step. And if you don't want to do it, then pay somebody else to do it. Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah.
What's the price point or price that you pay for your first?
That's a great question. It's a year ago, pricing was a lot better. I will say that. And we've had to dig deeply to find them, but we're generally averaging anywhere between 55 and 62, 63 cents on the dollar, depending upon the asset manager. We won't buy anything, it's got to have the margins. Just has to. Otherwise, we won't buy it. So, yeah.
What's your primary source of first?
Everywhere. Honest to God. We actually, believe it or not, we have, between asset managers through small regional banks across the country. We also buy from hedge funds. We buy from other note investors. We have attorneys that are probate attorneys, bankruptcy attorneys. They'll feed us, some notes as well. So we buy from everywhere.
Why
So
don't you buy seconds?
why don't I? That's a great question. That is a great question. There are this is knowing my what. There are some very, very successful second investors out there. Having gone through 2007, 2008, I do not want to go into an investment where I know that part of the time I'm going to lose my money by a foreclosing first. It's just me. It's just me. There's lots of very, very successful investors that invest in seconds. I'm just not one of them. Thanks for the question, though. That's great. Anybody else? Yeah?
You pull credit reports.
Generally speaking, no. Unless we are working with a borrower to be able to modify their loan. And by the way, when we get a borrower to reperform, it's my personal preference to it's my personal preference to not put a permanent loan modification in place at first. They have to earn that. So we put a trial payment plan in place first, but that's when we'll pull our credit reports to see where the borrowers are. But understand, we're going into defaulted situations here. Their credit is very likely in the toilet. So we know that going in. It's just a matter of being able to work with them. We more focus on their pay stubs, their tax returns, stuff like that, because we know their credit's already tanked. So, yep.
The time of that, so you typically would do like a forbearance agreement, but then they could transition after a period of time of performance to a loan mod,
Correct.
like that.
Yeah, and typically our forbearance agreements will last about 12 months.
Okay.
Yeah, we like to season the note. Yeah, thank you, everybody. I appreciate it. I hope you have a good time. Thank you.